Well, it's great to see you guys today. Great to be with you on our Sermon Recap podcast. Here we are, guys. Good to see y'all this morning.
We are here.
Had a good weekend. We're all here. We're doing well. Ready to face another week, but just want to spend a little time talking about this weekend.
Yep. It was good.
Okay.
And we're done.
Yeah, all right.
Choose joy.
Choose joy.
We are choosing joy.
Good kickoff to a brand new series with this idea of choosing joy and focusing in on Paul's letter to the church at Philippi and what that means. And I guess a good place to start is that why this series now? What was it that compelled you? Do you feel like that, hey man, it's a good time for us to dive in and go through Philippians and the idea of helping to challenge people to choose joy based off of what all's going on around them?
Sometimes it just comes down to where God has me in the Bible that I'm reading and gleaning from, and something that leaps up in my heart that it's time, I believe a preacher needs to preach things that are really on their heart at the moment. Mm-hmm. I've never been good at taking a sermon or a topic or something that's been handed to me and preaching it. It has to be really alive in my heart at that moment before it works. If I could take a great sermon that somebody else wrote for another time and try to deliver it, and it would be flat as a pancake, because it's got to be alive for you. And Philippians has just been really in my heart a lot lately.
Yeah. That's good. I know you had mentioned, kind of setting up this message as well, or setting up this series, the idea that just in the context of life, a lot of people that we talk to feel like, man, there's just so many different things that are coming at them.
Sorry, that's the answer you're trying to get me to. That's the right one too. Sorry, I quit mid-answer on you there. Yeah, you're like, hey, but
yes, I realize God's giving you messages to preach. I'm not asking you to preach something God's not giving you.
Why don't you just write down, Greg, what you want my answers to be, and I'll give them to you, okay? No, for real.
Flat as a pancake.
For real, it truly is. I guess I've ruined it now, but it truly is a time when people need that, for real. People need to know joy in the middle of trials. I mentioned it yesterday or over the weekend of so many people that are going through things, just multiple fronts that are coming against them, And I said this yesterday. If you think that I'm talking about you, I am, and 15 other people.
Right.
And I'm not exaggerating that. So many people are coming saying, Pastor, I feel like I'm getting attacked here, and here.
Yeah.
And it's so easy in the middle of that just to lose your joy.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to just really call us back to that because, again, we said it. Paul's in a really rough circumstance when he wrote this book, and that's a key part of Philippians that if you don't study it, you don't get it. You don't always realize through reading it. I mean, Paul says there that he's in chains, and so easy just to skip over that and not realize what's happening there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've often wondered about that. Like, would it really be a good book about joy if he hadn't been in prison?
It wouldn't have been as real, It's just so real. His circumstance makes the book come to life. That's why it's important to study the Bible deeply. Find out who wrote it, when it was written, what the circumstances were on its writing, where was the author, who was his audience. There's so much about Philippians to know. Paul had this incredibly, and we hit some of this over the weekend, this incredibly close relationship with him. And he did with the Ephesians as well, and there were others. But the Philippians, he said, I have you in my heart. They were just, he loved them. He poured out his love on them in a way that was just pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And understanding all that background really helps you get the message of the book. It's important when you study a book of the Bible to know the author, the circumstance, and the audience, and the time. You really need to delve into what that book meant to them to properly interpret what it means for us today.
Yep.
You really do.
Yeah.
You need to ask yourself about the Philippian church and where they were and what they were experiencing, and read the book through that lens. So,
That's good.
it's what we're trying to do.
What we're trying to do.
You can take it and run with it. And again, I said this, but in the prep for this message, I was really kind of back and forth on how I was going to approach it and exactly how to put it to people and how to apply it. And I remember just on Thursday before I was going to preach that night, it's like I just rearranged everything just to flow with what Paul said,
Right.
and not what Andy wanted to make out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's important for preachers. I know we have some preachers listening. I think it's important that you don't just craft a good sermon that all just fits together, and at the end they say, "Wow, that was really good. He worked hard on that, and it was so clear and concise," and all that stuff's good. But
Sure.
if you don't get to the heart of what the Scripture is actually saying, you miss something big.
You had quoted scripture with this statement when once again kind of prepping as we were going through this idea of getting ready to walk through this part of Philippians. The joy of the Lord is my strength.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Please feel free to. I think David said it originally in that. I don't know that 100%.
It was Nehemiah.
It was Nehemiah.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nehemiah. Messed that one up on you.
He's watching.
Yeah, there you go.
David certainly knew that. I'm trying to think. Did David?
He may not have
say
said.
that
He may
somewhere?
not have said that.
I guess it's possible he said it as well. I could be missing that, but
Well, I'm going to go with your knowledge on that more so than mine. So let's go with Nehemiah on that one. The idea, though,
they will figure that out.
Look it up.
everybody go look it up right now. No, but that statement, "The joy of the Lord is my strength." In 2023, I don't know how often I reflect upon that idea about the joy that comes from knowing Him, the joy that comes from Him. That's what gives me strength. Now, there's a lot of other things out there that I look to be my strength, but it's not joy. Why do you think it's so important for us today in the circumstances and times that we live in? Why do you think it's so necessary for us to realize that and to live that out?
If you jump back to Nehemiah, I think it's Nehemiah 8 where that is. If you jump back to Nehemiah, he was in a situation where he saw the incredible decline of everything that he loved. He looked at Jerusalem. He's actually serving in the court of a foreign king, and the news came to him. I think it was his brother. Somebody brought the news that of Jerusalem. There was, trying to rebuild the walls of the city. Some had gone back to try and deal with the temple and rebuild that. The walls of the city were lying in ruins, and it just gripped his heart. Something gripped his heart that he wanted to rebuild. So Nehemiah goes back, and basically through a miracle of God, the king pays for it,
Right.
for him to go back, lets him go, provides him with the connections to get the materials, and all kinds of stuff happen there. And so it's in that context that Nehemiah said that. And I think that's true of us in a lot. We've seen some things that we loved kind of decline. It feels like we've lived it through a time of some decline in our nation's history, And it's so easy to lose sight of your joy in the midst of all that. It really is. And I think people struggle with that. We live in times it's really tough economically right now.
Right.
People are paying a lot for food and for gas and for rent, and it's just a tough time to live in. And then you've got the constant barrage of bad news all the time. We hear bad news from every corner.
Yep.
And if you watch the news, which I encourage people to severely limit that, you just see a lot of people in the public realm just acting like middle schoolers.
Yeah.
On both sides. It's like there's no reason, there's no real conversation. I guess we're getting off in areas maybe that don't help people, but it's so easy to just watch that and get so discouraged.
Yes.
It really is. It's if I can turn on the news and think, oh my goodness, what is going on? Are we even having intelligent conversations anymore? Or are we just throwing stuff at each other, fighting like on the playground? It feels that way. And it's so easy in that just to lose your joy. But I've said this many times, whatever your diet is, whatever you're putting into yourself is what's going to determine your mental state and your outlook on life.
Right.
If you're willing to sit there and watch that garbage over and over again, you're just going to be mad and angry. And that's why so many people are. I think a lot of the media today fuels anger. If you want to put up a video that's going to get 1 million views. It's going to be something like so-and-so gets owned by so-and-so. There's a lot of that up there, you know. This, if you're conservative or liberal, whatever you are, it's the other side gets owned by this.
Right.
And somebody just gets cut off with this brilliant argument. And you're like, yeah. For me, I won't speak for everybody. For me, I like that kind of thing too.
Sure.
But something goes wrong in my heart when I watch that.
Yeah.
Something goes wrong. It's like, yeah, get them. And it fuels my anger.
Yeah.
Instead, I've learned to get away from all that. I've learned to be less informed, consequently less misinformed, I think. And I've learned to really hang on to the truth and the joy of Jesus, and to stay in the Word more than I'm in the news. And I don't say that with any sense of moral superiority, but I've honestly just turned that off and gotten in the Word. I could not live, I couldn't lead, I couldn't take people in a good place at all if I didn't do that.
And I think that goes back to the idea of choosing joy, because you could easily choose to scroll through all those videos for hours and choose anger or
Get lost,
choose
yeah.
whatever the
I've done it.
reaction is, you know.
I've done it.
But go, no, not today, you know.
Yeah, yeah. You just have to sometimes just step back and really examine your life and what you're doing, and not go down the rabbit hole that's so easy to go down, and just be intentional about what your mental diet's going to be.
It's good.
That is part of choosing joy.
It is. Yeah. The one of the overarching statements that you had mentioned this weekend in the message was the idea that our joy is not dependent on our circumstances, I think you drew the difference there between joy and happiness. That there are certain things that happen in our life and they make us happy. Certain things that make us sad or upset or whatever. But that joy isn't necessarily dependent upon our circumstances, but it comes from a relationship with Christ. I think it's a strong determination that the difference that we got to draw a line between there about joy and happiness when it comes to choosing joy.
Joy is absolutely independent of circumstances. The Bible says that. I've seen it in my life. I've seen it in countless lives of people who the joy of the Lord sprung up in their lives in terrible circumstances. Mm-hmm. It almost stands out. It does stand out more in terrible circumstances. So it's just not connected to that. But joy is more of an abiding thing than it is an instant thing. You know, we tend to like things that are just instant. You know, I get the hit of dopamine through watching this video or doing whatever I want to do. We want those instant hits. Joy is not like that. It's something abiding that is over time, and it's something you walk in and live in. It's not a hit. Happiness comes as kind of a hit sometimes, and unhappiness follows right behind it as another hit. It's up and down. It's a roller coaster. Joy is steady.
That's good.
You like that?
Joy is steady. We kept going through the message, and you talked about 3 specific ways that our joy grows. Our joy grows when we pray with others, when we serve with others, and when we stand with others. I was thinking about just my experiences as you were talking this weekend, and kind of just reviewing the times that I've seen joy grow in my own life. I mean, I can certainly see some examples of where that took place. The serving with others really grabbed a hold of me, though, because when I start thinking about how my faith has grown, I don't know that there are more things that have helped my faith grow than when it came to serving others or serving with others. There's just something about locking arms with somebody and doing something that helps other people that allows me to experience that joy.
It's incredible when we're all around and the team is together. Sometimes I just look around the room and say, God's using us together. Mm-hmm. I've got some perspective now.
Sure.
I'm getting more and more. I've been in pastoral ministry 29 years now, and here at Upward for going on 26. And you get some perspective over what really brings joy. And the church is a pretty good-sized church now. It's, more than 10 times what it was when we started. That doesn't bring me joy. It really doesn't.
Yeah.
The attendance numbers are great. That honestly doesn't bring me joy. The financial numbers are great. and all that's good, and,
Sure.
and it's certainly I want that to continue, and the lack of it can certainly bring pain. But with the perspective I have, I can honestly say the greatest joy that I have right now in Upward is you guys and the team that is with us, the guys right here in this room, and the men and women on our team, the volunteers. You know, we just had our volunteer appreciation event last week, and I remember standing on the stage and calling our team up there, the staff team, and then had, you know, a few hundred volunteers out there in the room. That was, to me, that's one of the best moments I've had in pastoral ministry, you know. Far overshadows a big Easter. You know, Easter we broke our attendance record, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But standing there on that stage with you guys and looking at y'all and the volunteers, that was joy for me. It really was. We did this together.
Right.
And in saying all that, obviously, I always want to say, Jesus.
Yes.
I've been in church long enough that you go. It's just true. Jesus obviously is
Yes.
He's building His church,
Right.
you know, and we're helping. I don't even know if we could say we're helping. We're partnering with Him in whatever way He lets us.
He's letting us help.
Exactly.
But whatever is done, we have a part in it, and we did it together.
Right.
And that means more to me than sometimes all we got done is the fact we did it together.
Yeah, I mean, I even think of Easter. It's like we always add at least a service. We add a practice to try to get everything together. We meet earlier so we can get, we do all these things, but then like you get there and you go, oh, it's going to be such a long day or whatever. But then you're with your people. It's like your family. You've built in, even though, yeah, you'll be tired at the end of the day, you've built in joy. Like, you can't help but leave with that joy.
I try to tell people in ministry and in leadership, build a team of people that you love and people you want to do life with and do ministry with, and enjoy that and build that team. And don't make it all about the results.
Right.
At the end of the day, when it's all said and done, 20 years from now, I'll likely be retired, and put me at about 75, I guess. Maybe not. I'll go on as long as God wants me to. 20 years from now, I'm not going to look back on all that. I'm going to look back on y'all and say, man, what a team. People miss this sometimes too. And I'm going to say this. Ministry people miss this by jumping on the next greatest opportunity that comes along. I know pastors that are always looking for another opportunity in another place. And I know church people who are always looking for a church that's doing a little better, or maybe the cooler place to be, or they have this or they have that. There is something to be said. I said before, joy abides. To really find joy, you need to do some abiding yourself and stay somewhere.
Yeah.
I believe that. I believe pastors need to stay longer than they typically do in our day. And I believe people need to stay in their church through the rough times. Every church has its seasons where it's just soaring, and then its seasons where it's struggling. Every church does. Upward does too.
Absolutely.
We're in a season right now where we're soaring. We will go through another season where we're struggling. And there's always a church down the road that's soaring while you're struggling, and vice versa. And there are always people who always want to be in the church when it's on the upswing. We've been through some times when we never went through really decline, but we went through real challenges and plateaus and bumpy seasons when we hurt inside. Sticking it out through those things gets you to a place of this incredible joy. It really does.
And it gets you off of yourself too.
Really
and I
does.
know you talked about that yesterday, and entering into that suffering. I don't know if I want to call bumpy times in church suffering, but kind of going through
can
that.
feel like it sometimes.
Being in the trenches.
It definitely is. Suffering
Okay, so
at
we do want
times.
to call it that.
Yeah, I would. Sometimes bumpy times in church is suffering because your heart gets hurt and people come, people go. It's not always pretty. It's really not. But, the counterintuitive part of that message yesterday that I really struggle with, but it's there. You read it, it's there in Philippians 1. to find joy, you enter into the service and the sufferings of others. When you pray for people, you enter into their sufferings. Paul said that of them, inasmuch he said it both in my chains and in the defense and confirmation of the gospel, you are partakers with me of grace. King James said of my grace. He's saying you suffered with me, now you get to walk in my grace that God's given me.
And he's writing from a place of, what most would say is suffering. I mean, he's writing from. I mean, there is a sense in which he's suffering right now as well as he's writing this. So I mean, and then he's still once again coming out with that message of joy to kind of go back to what you're talking about. Does it mean as much if he's not imprisoned from this? Probably not, because it's easy to write about this when you're. It's easy to write about it when the church is soaring, right?
It's a good 3-point sermon.
Exactly. Like, let's all jump in here, but when you enter into the suffering of others, when you're writing from a place of suffering, man, but you can still talk about joy and experience joy. Yeah, there's something powerful in that.
It's real.
Yeah.
I'm thinking to the one of the Star Wars movies, one of the older ones, when Rey and Finn are getting in the Millennium Falcon there, and Han Solo's in there. Mm-hmm. You remember the place where he says, "It's all true."
Yes.
It's all true.
Yes.
I'm not quite that old yet.
But The Force Awakens, I think that's what that.
One of them. Yeah, I think so. Man, I could just tell people all this stuff we talked about. It's all true. It's all real.
Yeah.
It really is. The joy of the Lord is so real. I'm not saying that because I'm supposed to make this podcast or some sermon series work. It is true. It's real.
It's good.
I like it.
All right. Well, it's been good. We went down some paths, but I guess that's why you're watching us, because if you're still here, we do that fairly often. Love y'all so much. Next week's going to be fun. We're going to explore another part of joy next week and a couple weeks beyond that, and are excited. And thank you so much. We'll see you again next time.
Bye-bye.